In this presentation, I will be introducing you to the first of our 5 moral principles, the principle of non-maleficence. You will recall that we are regarding our basic moral principles as universalizable. They apply to all people and to all people equally. We understand them to be prima facie principles rather than absolute ones. We will be using these principles to analyze a case about end-of-life medical decisions. The principle of non-maleficence says that we should do no harm. It is the basis for our idea that we ought not to kill people, that we ought not to inflict injury upon them, that we ought not act in ways that make people worse off. The focus with the principle of non-maleficence is on physical harm, but emotional or psychological harm could be or often is included. It might even include any action that negatively affects a person's welfare. The principle of non-maleficence is the basis for our idea of a right to life, the idea that people ought not to be killed. It's the basis of our moral suspicions about abortion, euthanasia, war, or capital punishment. And it points to our prohibition of assault, torture, or humiliation, all things that cause people tremendous harm. It is important for you to recognize that non-maleficence is what is often called a negative principle. It points to negative obligations. It points to what you may not do. We could say you fulfill it by doing nothing. You honor non-maleficence so long as you don't do anything that hurts people. So it requires you not to do certain things. And that's why it's referred to as negative. Linda Post and Jeffrey Bluestein have written a handbook for healthcare ethics committees, and they say this about the principle of non-maleficence. The principle grounds obligations to avoid unnecessary infliction of harm or suffering, recognizing that conceptions of harm as of good are inextricably tied to individual values and interests. Most, if not all, therapies carry the potential for some risk as well as benefit, and it would not be feasible to limit the therapeutic arsenal to treatments that are entirely benign. End of quotation. Post and Bluestein are recognizing what any seasoned healthcare practitioner knows, and that is that the therapies we use to make people better often have very harmful side effects or harms that accompany those therapies. So a surgery obviously cuts through skin and muscle to get to the artery that needs to be repaired. A drug has negative side effects. It's not intended to make us nauseous. It's not intended to cause us suffering, but often those drugs that address some symptom or some underlying illness have those side effects. Now, that does not mean that because they are harmful, that they are morally prohibited. Of course not. But it does mean that healthcare practitioners should always carefully attend to the benefits of those therapies, hopeful that they outweigh the harms that are often and always accompanied by them. Why is it wrong to harm or injure people? Why is this principle of non-maleficence a valid moral consideration? The British moral and legal philosopher H.L.A. Hart has argued that non-maleficence is the most basic of all of our moral considerations, and that's a part of its validity, because in the absence of physical security, in the absence of a broad recognition and observance of the principle of non-maleficence, all other moral considerations, indeed all other human aspirations, would make no sense. I mean, put simply, if I had always to be looking over my shoulder out of fear that you were going to hit me over the head with a baseball bat or assault me or shoot me for no good reason, I would have no luxury of committing myself to anything else other than my own survival. For Hart, this reality is grounded in our physical nature and in the fact that all of us are relatively equal in our vulnerability to injury and to death. Because of that vulnerability and because it's relatively equal among us, Hart believed we simply had to recognize and observe in significant measure this principle that says we may not harm or injure each other.